Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Choice event. So good that you are here with us today. My name is Florian. I am the communication lead at the Climate Choice, and we are happy to organize the Choice event series. Hello, everyone, in order to inform you every second Thursday. So good that you are here with us today. My name is Florian. I am the communication lead at the. Sorry for the technical problem. Sorry. I'm back now. And today I'm very happy to welcome Thomas, Udesen, and Lara Obst, who will both in a minute tell us more about how procurement leaders can steer and develop responsible supply chains. There will be a few more people to join us. So I'll first introduce you now to how we'll be organizing the Choice event today. First of all, you should know that we are recording the webinar today, which you already heard back then. And this way you'll be able to watch the talk again afterwards on YouTube. We use the webinar function of Zoom, which means that you can see me and Thomas and Lara later on, but we cannot see you. In order to still have a lively discussion with you, there are two ways to communicate with us for you. The easiest way is to post a question or a comment here in the chat window, and also to vote up the questions or comments of others with a like. We use this tool to collect your questions during the presentation so that our experts can then answer them at the end of the webinar in a final Q&A round. The second feature is our Slack group. You have all been invited to this group by email in advance. And here you also have the chance to ask questions to the speakers after the 1 hour of our webinar. And in addition, you can also use the group in general to network and to exchange ideas with other experts on climate transformation. So now more on us, the Climate Choice, and why we organize the Choice event series. We have made it our mission to support companies in their climate transformation. And therefore, we are building the climate data-driven software platform for decarbonizing companies and their supply chains. You will hear more details on how we do this later on. So as a further means to support companies, we invite experts every second week to show individual areas where companies can easily reduce CO2, either in internal processes or in the supply chain. That's why I'm very pleased to now welcome Thomas Udesen, Chief Procurement Officer at Bayer, who has now also joined, which is very nice to see you.
Very nice, timely, it seems.
Yeah, it's perfect, perfect timing. He will start by explaining the opportunities and challenges in building sustainable and profitable procurement. And Lara Obst, founder and CEO of the Climate Choice, will then elaborate on how improved collaboration between companies and suppliers can help to achieve this goal in practice. Welcome, Lara and Thomas. Great that you are here today.
Thank you for the invite.
Both of us.
Yeah, I'm gonna just listen first to Thomas. So very pleased to get your insights, and then I'm gonna continue later. And yeah, looking forward to exchange here and also to see all the questions in the chat.
Yeah, and before you start, Thomas, to give you both an impression of who is with us today, we have prepared a small survey that I will now show you. The first question concerns the professional background, and I've started it now. You should all see it, and you can now start and click on which of the professions, which of it describes your position in the company best. So are you from a startup, or are you working as a CEO or in the fields of sustainability, procurement, marketing, or others? Great, you're already all clicking, which is very good. And I can see already a lot of procurement people, which is very good. And I will close it in 2 seconds. We have still 2 seconds. And if not closed it, and you can see the results. So as expected, a lot of procurement leaders here and also sustainability managers. Good to see. And the second question is about your background of interest. So why are you here with us today? What is the reason that you are interested in sustainable procurement? Is it because it's a major part of the climate strategy of your company? Or because you want to prepare your company for legal guidelines, also increasing demands of business customers or others? Again, I give you now 3 more seconds. And I will close it now. And we can see, yeah, actually, the most of you actually see that this is a major part of climate transformation and that the supply chain is a key lever for this. So very good to see. And I hope this gives you also some insights, Thomas, to start with your presentation now.
Absolutely. So again, thanks for inviting me, and also thanks to Lara. I mean, we've been in contact now for quite a while, and we have, of course, been sharing notes and trying to find out how can we do this together to also help the people who want to drive climate transformation. I mean, that's probably one of the most important things that we all have to deal with these days. So I think the philosophy of collaborating and doing this together is probably going to be the winning formula. So very happy to share, one perspective, and that's what it is. It's my perspective. I guess to some extent, it's of course driven by all the activities that I have the pleasure of being part of as part of my day job with Bayer. As mentioned, I'm the CPO, so I have the chance of actually influencing this. I'm also part of a number of industry initiatives together for sustainability. That is the chemical industry initiative. And there's a bottom-up dimension, which is the Sustainable Procurement Pledge, that I will also be sharing a little bit more information out. So I hope that you can actually see this now.
It's showing up.
It's showing up, and if I put in presentation mode, you should see this.
Everything's perfect.
Okay, yeah. Very good.
Great.
So I'm going to be, talking again, sharing a perspective around sustainable procurement, and I think it's important that the definition here is really all 3 dimensions. It's the people, planet, and profit. So yes, there is of course a lot that we need to do around climate, but there is an equally big social dimension. And of course, we also need to make sure that the economic perspective, including how do we make sure that we have ethical business practices, is part of that. So when I talk about sustainable procurement, it's really all 3 of them. It's economic, it's environmental, and it is social. I think it's been a topic that has received, thankfully, a lot of attention, and also having 200 so people on this call is great, because it is also a topic that needs our attention. And I think here most people have understood that this is a real issue. Very few people doubt it these days. It's a very unpopular voice. So we as humanity are clearly overstepping our planetary boundaries. And of course, we see it on multiple dimensions, particularly when it comes to climate change, but also when it comes to biodiversity, the loss that we are seeing across both our oceans, our forests, and also on land. So we need to take urgent action, because it's also manifesting itself on different dimensions. Of course, we see the climate impact, and it's not, if it's not every day that you put on the TV, you see that there's a new record around climate impacts. Whether it's fires or it's new temperatures or the acceleration of the melting of the ice caps. So there's a very tangible impacts happening on the ground. But we also see, of course, humanitarian consequences. We see mass migration. We see people having to, leave their home they had simply because that they are not able to feed themselves. And one of the, of course, disturbing facts is that there's still today around 600-700 million people who are not getting the calories that they need to sustain themselves. So, hunger is still a big issue out there that we need to address. And of course, we see now it also impacts geopolitical tensions. We have gone from a period of, let's say, globalization where a lot of trade and a lot of things were possible to one where protectionism is also creeping in. And of course, as a procurement practitioners, it means that things that the rules of the games are changing. And of course, we need to make sure that we are ready for that. We are still in it, I hope at the end of it, but I think Corona has, of course, been a wake-up call for most of us. So I think 2020 does, when we look back, it does represent a turning point in history, where we did stop up, pause, and maybe also reflect on how we actually conduct business. Is everything the way we used to do it the right one? And the answer is obviously no. Many of us have found out that there is a much more responsible digital, also at times, way that we can conduct business. And it's been, of course, painful, and we have seen great loss of life. We have seen economic impacts across society. But I think the most important thing we need to do, also coming through that, is to respect that loss and make sure we learn from what we can see in coming out of Corona. So certainly a lot of lessons which will impact how we are running businesses also moving forward. And I think that's also a good point for businesses to make a decision. So whilst, of course, all industries, all companies, large, small, they have unique challenges and they need to maybe address those challenges in different ways. I think one universal decision needs to be made by our companies out there, and that is, what is the role that you wish to have in terms of both your financial targets, but also your sustainability targets. Very few companies are now on the left side where they say this is about shareholder value exclusively, and all the other things are not really that important. Very uncool place to be. And we see a clear trend towards almost social enterprises at different degrees, but where you go over corporate contributor towards an impact generator. So clear trend towards the right, which is also what we would, of course, like to see. And I think, again, you want to talk about environmental transformation. You are all, on that path, and you're the ones who are enabling this trend. So that's really good. What is also nice is that the narrative or the vocabulary of industries, businesses, is really converging around the UN SDGs. So, for all the different activities we have, we can cluster them into these 17 objectives. It also allows you to actually compare, how good are you versus others? Are there other things you could be doing, etc. So it's a very helpful frame that the UN has provided to all of the businesses, and that makes the comparison really much simpler. I was asked also to talk a little bit, so how can that look in practice? And I think I'm one of the very lucky people who work for a company that also absolutely gets this. So our vision is health for all, hunger for none. It's bold, and as you can all appreciate, we are by far not really where we want to be as society. But we do think that we get there through science for a better life. So it is about also having science, making sure that we are also looking at sustainability as an integral part. We have 3 divisions. We have crop science, we have pharmaceutical, we have consumer health. And what we have chosen to do also quite recently, as we are making sure that the sustainability aspirations is an integral part of how we do, but also how we communicate, how we drive our supply chain. We have signed up for the Science-Based Target Initiative, looking at the 1.5 degree scenario, which means that when we talk now about CO2 reduction, there are some very, very significant target reductions that we need to do internally. So what is referred to as scope 1 and 2, but also externally, which is scope 3. Of course, when you talk about internally, there's a lot you can do already today. You can move all your energy consumption to renewables, you can change your fleet, you can reduce travel, which is anyway happening right now, but at least you can make sure you don't increase that. And you can look at how do you really produce your products and services in more carbon neutral ways that also has a lesser impact. And of course, scope 3, I'll cover that a little bit later, but scope 3 is how do you then partner with your supply chain to make sure that the impact is reduced. For many manufacturing companies, and Bayer is no different from many others, it's 80% plus of your CO2 footprint actually comes through scope 3. So you can do a lot internally, and you should, but the majority of your CO2 impact actually happens with the products and services that you are buying. So whilst it's great to do this, I think also it's important. This is maybe the sad news. It's a long journey. I mean, it really takes a long-term commitment to also make things better. And Bayer started, if we put just the stick in the ground with the UN Global Compact, we were one of the first companies that signed up. That was in 2000. And of course, since then, a lot of activities have been introduced across the global supply chains. As we have a very strong presence also in agribusiness with our crop science division, being present in India, the topic of child labor is obviously one that has been very close to our heart and had a lot of attention actually since 2005, where we formalized one of the first corporate programs to also make sure that the children are not working in the fields, but are taken to school and they have a chance to enjoy their childhood. What we also did 10 years ago, we just celebrated our 10-year birthday, was we decided not to do this on our own. We believe that if you want to have a big impact, you need to collaborate in industries with other companies. And we founded Together for Sustainability, which back then was 6 companies. Now it's 34 companies across the world, where we are sharing our assessment, our audits. Same happens with the pharmaceutical supply chain initiative. Since then, we have had many topics coming up. Palm oil, of course, where the RSPO was in its foundation. We are strong supporters here as well. Conflict minerals has also unfortunately shown that there are, particularly in Congo, and when it comes to mineral, there are challenges that needs to be addressed, where you can also bring transparency and better practices. 2019, we completely revamped our supplier code of conduct. We decided that it needs to be much more comprehensive, and we launched the new supplier code of conduct, which also has a lot of tips to our suppliers on how can you actually do things better, and what do we mean when we say this. And as I mentioned, the Science-Based Target Initiative has been really framing a lot of the environmental activities that we are working on 2021 onwards. Maybe also interesting to know that all our corporate bonus schemes, so the compensation for our people, is also dependent on our sustainability performance. So it's not just something that looks nice and something we like to talk about. It is also the way that we're actually compensating everybody in the organization, of course, including our board of management. I think that's quite a good practice that, again, many organizations are starting to realize that's how, again, you measure. You typically get what you measure. So this has, of course, implications on how business to business is conducted, and certainly see big changes when it comes to product portfolios. There is clearly a very high demand now for green innovations, solutions that has certain aspects of being better than the predecessor product or solution. There is much more now need for more circular business models. There is a clear shift also when it comes to bio-based materials. A lot of solutions are possible with different bio-based origins rather than the fossil fuel. And we see that there's a lot of innovation happening in this space. And then, of course, CO2, as many organizations, I think it's 2,000 organizations now who have signed up for the Science-Based Target Initiatives, which gives you a natural ceiling CO2 that you can use to also grow and run your business. And as that ceiling comes down, it's very clear that businesses will have to make decisions, not only around price and quality and availability. It's really about what is in the CO2 footprint, and there's going to be a value associated with that. So I certainly see that CO2 will become a currency of sorts that will help how decisions are made. For the supply chains, there is no doubt that there's a incredible high demand now for sustainable procurement, again, on all the dimensions. And it's not just in tier 1, it's really also looking at what goes on in your tier 2, tier 3. Of course, it's not practical to do that every day with assessments. So new solutions, data-driven solutions, AI, crowd type of solutions are emerging. That also gives you a better grip on what really happens deeper in your supply chains. Production will, there will be a drive towards zero impact or as little impact as technically possible. There will be a need for both transparent but also resilient supply chains. Corona, I think, showed that there is a vulnerability for organizations also. If you do not have resilient supply chains that have been set up with partners you can trust, and that you have created the agility in the supply chain that you need to keep, products and services moving. And this is simply not going to happen unless there's a new era of collaboration, both within the companies, but also outside of the companies. So business relationships are going to move. They will be sort of moving more towards larger strategic relationships. It's also then necessary for organizations to choose much more carefully who do you do business with and who do you not do business with. And I think the commitment towards a sustainable journey will be a key criteria of who are you going to deal with? Do you have the same philosophy? And with that, there's more of an ecosystem emerging. And to do this together, you need to start looking at what's the complexity that we see in the typical business-to-business transactions. Showing vulnerability, being prepared to also address the complexities, which often are quite wasteful and doesn't really add any value either to the buyer or the seller. And that requires a different type of conversation. It's trust, it's a longer relationship. It's not about price. It's like tendering that you're going to do this, and next week I might ask you again. They're going to be much, much deeper. And it's a bit, I guess, how business used to be conducted with longer relationships, deeper relationships. And I think that is absolutely going to come back now as well. So the challenge is enormous, and we're all depending on whether we are going to be successful or not. And I think that really requires that a sort of a trinity of constituents start to work together in a completely different way. First of all, we need to make sure that the innovators are obviously funded, that they have the focus also to come up with bio-based, renewable, circular type of solutions. The good news is that there are some really clever people out there who can solve a lot of the challenges that we have. But often those ideas are not really going to make it to the market unless there is a strong intervention also from the regulators. And that's certainly around, making sure that good behavior, good products are being rewarded, and bad products, bad behavior is being punished. There are, of course, quite a few things happening on the regulatory space. I suspect many of you are in Germany, so you are, of course, familiar with the Lieferkettengesetz. There is also regulation happening at the EU level. Our hope as a practitioner is obviously that we can agree on those standards as high as possible to avoid that we spend most of the time trying to translate what does the Germans want, what does the Americans want, what does Chinese, but that we have a agreed standard that we can really drive towards. I also think that a lot of our NGOs are really critical in this, also making sure that we have transparency, that we also keep each other honest towards this progress that we have. But none of these great ideas that will be helpful will happen unless markets start to buy it, and that is of course relevant for us as individuals. So we need to change our buying patterns. That's an enormous power that we have. But likewise, we need to do the same when it comes to our companies, our procurement practices. We need to make sure that it's also possible to start having discussions in broader forums, multi-stakeholder activities like we see with RSPO, or where we address gaps in the system with the fair trade, whether it's linked to child labor or whether it's linked with other human rights violations. And industries have a big role to play, and that's where activities like Together for Sustainability really becomes critical. That you don't want to have this walk on your own. And there is this African proverb says if you want to go fast, you go on your own. If you want to go far, you go together. And I think when it comes to this topic, it's one of those topics where we absolutely need everybody to pull their weight. And things are improving, but it's not really working good enough as it stands. And that's one of the reasons why we also decided to launch the Sustainable Procurement Pledge. It's a non-profit, everybody is volunteering, no commercial interest, but it's for procurement, by procurement. So we've launched this community at spp.earth, where all the necessary information on how do you actually start driving different behavior and make better decisions is made available for procurement practitioners, by procurement practitioners. One of the observations that was also part of the impetus was that there is, I think, 15,000 companies who have signed up for the UN Global Compact. But when we talk to the procurement practitioners in those companies and saying, what is really going on, it's very often that you hear there are significant gaps, and not everything that looks great, it really is as great as it's being portrayed. So we decided these principles are important. They're based on the UN Global Compact principles, and they're really around us as professionals, as individuals. We stand up for people, our planet. We do believe that it will be a change that we will do together. We don't expect other people to solve our problems. We start with ourselves, and we start today. We recognize to do this, we need to share knowledge. We need to also listen to other opinions. And by doing that, we will be in a position to leave the right legacy of procurement, so that when grandchildren at one point is looking back saying, where were you when this happened? And we can also say that our function did what we could do, because we do hold an incredible power. And the feedback in this community is actually that there's, let's say, 4 gaps. There's a number of gaps, but 4 quite noticeable. One is around knowledge. Most of the ambassadors, most of the procurement practitioners simply don't know where to start. It's an enormous, complex domain, lots of noise out there. So we need to help everybody to get a little bit, make more sense of this, and make sure that they have what they need at their fingertip. They also need to have some support, some personal guidance, have some mentoring roles. They do highlight that often leaders are not really as supportive as they're supposed to be. That can be in terms of allowing them to really pursue doing things differently. It could be in terms of resourcing. It could be in many different ways. But leadership absolutely needs also to step up. And with that also there is a chance to build confidence that we are doing the right thing. And the strategy around Empower Equip is more to the practitioners, and the leadership is more making sure that there is a path for people to also do what they know is right. And what is thankfully happening is we are growing enormously. We have around 6,000 ambassadors now from 142 countries. We have just launched in SPP Germany, so there's a group that's also happy to engage. And our ambition is to reach 1 million procurement practitioners, basically everybody that is doing procurement with a professional touch, and make sure that they make better decisions. And so far we see that around 73% of our ambassadors are confirming that they are now capable of making better, more sustainable decisions. And with 6,000 now and 1 million to go, I think you can all realize there is still a lot of work ahead of us. But it's worth it, we think, because as Spider-Man's uncle said, he said that with great power comes great responsibility. And that's what procurement is. It's not really a job, just a job anymore. It's a responsibility that we, the practitioners, hold. So with that, don't forget to sign the pledge. You can find it on LinkedIn. And Lara, I know you're going to talk about suppliers as well and how do we engage. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much, Thomas. So you made me smile a few times. I was really like, okay, that's totally a story that looks amazing, what you have achieved so far within your company and network. And I'm sure we have already quite a lot of questions. So we're going to collect them and put them all together in the end.
Very good.
And yeah, what I would like to continue your introduction with is really the topic of how can we collaborate and how can we drive this whole topic forward. Looking a little bit in the bits and pieces of the practical implications. So I'm going to introduce you more deeply into the topic of supply chain engagement. So as Thomas was showing us before, we do see that this net zero transformation of economy is really accelerating, and that it's not longer only due to regulation and like theoretical frameworks, but exactly due to a lot of initiatives and companies really forming these to also engage the whole supply chain. And it does mean that companies specifically that have set science-based targets or climate targets aligned to the science, that they need to find methods and tools and resources to actually equip their suppliers to also set up a climate strategy and reduce CO2. And this is because we all know, and we heard it before, the biggest chunk of the emissions from company are actually bought in through products and services. But on the other hand, those suppliers you work together with, they might not yet have the capabilities to like go deeper in the topic, or they do have, and you might even not know it. So it's no longer a time of working in silos, but really to collaborate and find out together if you're on the same path and if you have taken the right measurements and steps to go into the next level of corporate decarbonization. So for us, or what I would really like to elaborate on, is that supplier relationship management is not really about data collection, but it is about the goal to collaboratively reduce CO2 together. So it really needs this whole setup of supplier engagement. And supplier engagement therefore brings the question: what do you need to, build up? How does a collaboration look like? And how can you bring this capability or I can't say that word, this resource building into your supply chain to really work together with your business partners? And how I would like to visualize it is by showing you a journey that we see working together with our partners, which basically has these 4 different levels or phases. And the first one is what we also heard from Thomas, to build up really your own strategy and to start with your own company. So everything you want to bring into the practice with your partners, definitely you should start with yourself. So it involves looking towards the challenge of decarbonization. It definitely involves having your own climate targets, but then also a roadmap how to pull it off and how to go into action. And then the second phase would be that you really form a scalable program that goes beyond your company and involves your suppliers and really thinks about a program, how you want to lay the whole thing out and how you want to approach your partners. And third one is the one we're going to go deep into, is a part of engagement where you work together with suppliers on an eye level and really find out how you bring your plans into actions. And the last one would be that you really focus on why you have been doing this whole process, is that you want to provide value. And if you look into decarbonization, it's really the value of reducing CO2. And the third phase, this whole topic of supplier engagement, is really a critical one, and one we see that is most challenging to companies, because so far it's often understood as a process where you simply request data from companies. And we also had it just before in the chats. It can be really overwhelming if you want to measure sustainability within your supply chain, because sustainability has this broad focus. It goes into social, it goes in environmental, it goes into economic indicators, and now climate comes even on top. So you don't want to have a complex, maybe not really understandable process going on that is focusing only on data collection without driving your outcome of providing value. But instead, you really want to have a structured way to set the whole thing up. And again, there we break it down into 3 things. So you need to prepare which data you're actually looking for. You need to pull out the data collection. Then it's most important to have a good analysis behind it, and then to go into the value you want to provide. And for me, on the topic of climate, it's definitely decarbonization. And yeah, so if you want to take away these 3 things, what we see is that, yeah, the initial setup in a company to prepare actually data collection is again really critical. So we have discussed it. To set your climate targets, it's already challenging, but then it's also especially challenging if you want to think ahead of which data you actually need, how you want to make sure that the processes you want to reach in the end will come true, and which data you need for that. So it will not be enough to just have a random set of what we call ESG criteria in a questionnaire, so environmental, social, and governmental ones. But if you want to go into the climate topic, you really need to have this dimension specifically in there to measure climate maturity along your supply chain and really improve also actions on that later. And for that, next, if you have an idea where you want to go and which indicators are important for you, you need to identify the suppliers you're going to work with. So we also talk about that later. And most important, inform your suppliers and take them along that journey, onboard them in your own process. And I'm pretty sure they can give already in the beginning feedback of things that you have maybe not integrated yet. And then it just comes to data collection, and it should, again, in your whole company also include everyone. So we often start talking with sustainability officers or climate officers, but for sure it needs procurement. And if you start in procurement, then please also talk with your climate officers, because they definitely also work on the same mission, and ideally your whole company. And then it's about sharing resources. So if you're going to do this whole process, then make sure you have a centralized platform or tool where the different stakeholders can access to, and where they can maybe share information as well, and where you also have a centralized ways of doing things, so you can in the end compare it and really have high quality outcome as well. And then, as we talk so much about the engagement, again, I'm going to go deeper into that later, but really make sure that you also provide value along that whole process, that you support your suppliers or the partners you work with, so that there's a strong communication. And if you go then later, after what we have called the value proposition, so to say, after the collection process, you really want to see the result that you co-create together with your partners, with your suppliers on climate actions, that you find mutual benefits for both sides. And that involves like sharing your results and really also have an open discussion about feedback and the next steps. What I want you to take with you is that it is climate or supply chain collaboration is really also based on high quality data, but it is just a foundation for the result that you want to have in the end for the decarbonization and the work together as an co-creation of results. So if we understand supply chain collaboration and decarbonization actions as the main next step to take for corporate climate actions, then don't stay in a one-way situation. So we often see that right now this collaboration part is not really integrated, that it's maybe way too complex also your system. So don't make climate or a supply chain collaboration about data collection only, where there's no return for the partners you work with. Then you might end up with low participation and not really the outcome and the value that you want to support. So on the other hand, I would like to share how maybe a two-sided engagement process and a valuable process can be set up. I guess you all already know it, or probably also integrated already in your everyday life. So working together with other people always involves bringing trust in it. So make the whole process as transparent as possible. Please share what the data is used for, and most definitely also share the results with the suppliers or with the partners you involve, and make sure that you also provide incentives rather than increasing the pressure or the fear of like maybe giving incorrect answers. You really want to give incentives and maybe benefits, investments for companies or suppliers you work with that want to improve. So what it all shows us is that the whole engagement process is nothing that can be done simple, that is maybe complex, and that it needs communication, and that it also doesn't help to have a one-fits-all approach. So I was talking before about like how to identify your segments or the suppliers you work with. And there we see a big chance in like having this separate segments where you maybe put suppliers together that have the same climate maturity. So there might be some that already have their own methods, they already have science-based targets even, or they actually go along their own supply chain to activate their partners, or they are in a state where they really need support, where they're just starting, where you can provide resources and tools to go into a climate action planning. Other approaches could be around product categories, or if you have done that before, an impact analysis that you can find hotspots and go into specific areas. And the whole thing of providing value was mentioned a few times. So what could be a thing that you can really offer, and which different multiple values do we see? And we think it's really, really valuable on both sides, and actually got that already often as feedback. So if you make a transparent process, I think it's really clear that you also provide your suppliers with insights on especially innovation. So in the whole field of climate or social or sustainability, depends on which area you focus on, you can bring critical insights about best practices and business solutions, how they can innovate and become like a pioneer or leader in their own field. And second of all, also mentioned before, you can share the results. You can really openly also show how the competitiveness is in these areas and where there are maybe steps to improve. Companies gain more credibility because they also transparently show where they stand. They gain resilience, and they can communicate to their own customers what are already the next steps that they are taking along that journey. So for me, supply chain engagement is really focusing on this building of communication and collaboration. And I think there are so many initiatives that lead us away, and like principles to have in mind, like how it become like really a meaningful collaboration to work together, and how you can find a way to stress on these benefits. And what we were able to do as our company with that, with the climate choice, is that we are building towards enabling companies to focus on a climate set of sustainability criteria that enable them really to bring into their supply chain a transparent process, how they can engage and empower their suppliers to decarbonize. And we are happy to work with different customers together, or different areas, I would say. So on the one hand, with companies that really use our tool to engage their suppliers and to provide tools and resources for them to like really measure their climate maturity and go into actions. Or on the other hand, to work together with companies that use it to really understand for themselves where they stand, to benchmark and to go into action mode. And maybe how that looks into practice is that we try along these 3 steps, from data preparation along climate standards, to data collection, and then analysis and value, to provide like an so to say out of the box process how you can go into, but then also adapt it to your customer needs or to your company needs. So suppliers that do the process together with the company, get insights into their own performance. They find in 5 different areas improvements and can benchmark in it. It goes from social, environmental, and economic baselines into climate-specific topics, so that they in the end can also show to their customers where they stand and which efforts in decarbonization they can already show, or actually they can go towards working together with their customers, partners, to go into collaboration to put these actions into reality, because again, it often does not involve only one company, it does involve a whole system. So my 3 takeaways from the topic of supplier engagement is that you really want to work towards a 2-way relationship, that it's all about maximizing supplier value, and I'm sure you also have some insights about that, and that it needs to provide a lot of tools and insights, and that initiatives, partnerships, cross-industry wise really help to also broaden the view and not focus on competition, but on the other hand to share insights and build up better practice for social, environmental, and climate impact. And that's where I would leave it for the moment. And I'm really happy to get more questions. So Florian is probably in there. Do you want to guide us through?
Yes, so I would first of all like to thank both of you for sharing all of those very, very good and very interesting insights. And so now we will start our last Q&A round. Also thanks to Thomas, who has already taken the time to answer some of the questions in written form. That's very good. And maybe to start again at the beginning of our presentation and the Sustainable Procurement Pledge, there was one question more specific about that, and about how it's binding, and how the pledge or the initiative can check third parties if the improvements are actually really made.
This is an individual pledge, and you have to deal with your own conscience, and you have to be able to fall asleep at night. And if you are saying that you're going to do things better, and you are not going to do that, I can't control that, but I would hope that you don't get a good night's sleep. So that's what it is. It is about us making a pledge, a commitment to do things differently and better. And we will take any micro step. It is a journey. And I think that's something we also have to accept. You won't be able to get to nirvana in one clip of a finger. It's a long journey, and that's okay. And you should be proud of every single step you take, because you may inspire others to do the same. So it's your own conscience that's the biggest control mechanism here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I understand. And so maybe one of the questions that got the most votes, so it's the most interesting to the audience, is one about suppliers that already have sustainable solutions, and about how they can best reach out to procurers from larger organizations. And I think that actually both of you can also have an answer to that.
You want to go first?
Thanks. So I think that is really the part of the collaboration, what I see. So it's exactly not a one-way situation. It is really a two-way. And actually, I think also in the market, there's not, or very often, not one relationship. So you are not only the buyer or not only the seller. So you often buy from someone, and on the other hand, you procure something, or the other around. So it's really about signaling, I think, and to start a conversation, and then agreeing on which standards you want to fulfill, or what are your principles you want to work towards. So to get like a certain understanding what is a baseline, and then to find a way to communicate it, maybe prove it in the next way. So it really starts from where companies are right now. Not everyone can report already everything. This is why I think it also needs this engagement. But if you are there, that you have made certain pledges procedures or that you have agreed on a certain standard, then I think it comes to the next step that you are also able to report it and that you find a way of showing it in whichever data is available, and also bringing it towards the people you work together to ask the same from them when you have started with yourself. Thomas, you want to add on it?
Yeah, I think what is behind the question is also, in a way, how does maybe startups, address large corporations? Because I think if you are a large corporation, of course, you know who your customers are. So the question isn't that relevant. If you have a sustainable solution, it's probably because somebody has asked for it and it's part of your regular dialogue. So if you want to approach somebody that you don't know with a product in an industry where you are not known, that is, of course, a challenge. I get that, particularly because a lot of procurement organizations are organized in such a way that it's not very easy to find out who's the right person who can actually take this idea forward. So what a lot of organizations are starting to do is, of course, creating a bit of a platform, an innovation platform where you have a chance to also park such ideas that are then being dispatched into the organization to the right person. I see more and more of that happening. It's a bit like you're pushing but nobody's asking. So the chances for success is almost limited because it might not be the right thing, the right time. But what a lot of companies, and we do the same, is that we put our challenges out there to the open university. So we have a need and we ask for you to offer your solution. So there's a pull. And in at least my experience, when there is a pull, you're more likely to find the right people who can make a decision and make it priority. The push option, everybody is busy. It's hard to find that person.
Okay, very good. Thanks for both of your answers. So maybe as a summary of some of the questions that mostly are around how to motivate people internally as well as externally, and maybe also how to break all destructive behaviors, because I think in general it's really about changing a mindset and changing priorities. Do you have some extra tips or most important insights that could help procurement leaders to convince the management board and also the team and also externals just to really get the spark going there?
That's a big question. That's the challenge, right? What we are looking at, I think, is the biggest change program in recent human history. And if you just talk about procurement, if we say there's 1 million procurement practitioners to control 8.7 trillion trade, which is what takes place every year, how do you get into their head? But maybe more important, how do you get into their heart? That they recognize that they have to do things differently. I think for a lot of people, they get it. But as I go back to those four gaps that exist. There is often a knowledge gap. There is a lack of support. Maybe the leadership is not seen to support it. And I think one of the questions was around this. How do I explain it to my CFO? And there is two options we have. One is feel like a victim and we can't change it because these people around us doesn't get it, and poor us. Or we can start educating ourselves and build the vocabulary and the knowledge and learn how to also explain why this is a good idea, and why this is providing long-term value for the organization. And my recommendation is take your own destiny in your own hands and educate yourself, talk to people, build the vocabulary so that they get it. And at least in my experience, CFOs typically get it. If you explain it to them in a good way, why wouldn't they get it? Most of them are mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters anyway. So I think they get it, but you need to educate yourself that you can explain why it's a good idea to do it.
I would totally agree on that, and also think that actually, if you see people as individuals and not only in their role that they have or only the company they work for, then I guess that we are really living in the time where everyone is kind of thinking about sustainability and climate. So everyone actually has kind of the need to be part of it. Maybe not yet the knowledge of urgency or the knowledge of how we need to go into it. And I do agree totally that I think then everyone can especially give value by focusing on, in my profession, in my role, in my company, how can I contribute to it? Because I think that is not what is already there, that we have like the master plan, how to roll everything out. It's really like right now evolving. Everyone has just done maybe the first step or maybe the first 5 to 10%. So there is not really yet someone who has all figured it out, and everyone can really contribute by transferring this knowledge or the needed actions into their own profession. And I think that is what I found also very inspiring, that the whole topic is really not longer locked with like CSR or like certain parts of a company, but it really comes down to CFOs making different, we heard already, benefits or salary decisions based on impact, or like giving different goals. So if you find the right terms or languages, then I think you can bring it also in the whole company and increase even the interest in the whole topic.
I think if I can just add, Lara, because I agree. I think also it's in our human nature. We all want to do the right thing. We all want to feel that there is significance in what we do. And you know, if you are in procurement and you see this, you actually recognize that this world, this challenge we have, is not going to work unless procurement gets in the game. I mean, what more rewarding is it to know that we are part of this positive change that will be, you know, to the benefit of generations that follow. And I think once you get into this and you start realizing the power that you hold, it's quite nice. It's that's who we are, humans. So I think it's worthwhile. We can explain people. Most people want to get on the journey. Why not?
Very good and very inspiring. I hope for all of the people joining today. Yeah, we only have 3 minutes left. Maybe one very short answer to the question of standards, because this was also voted up very high. Standards to measure the reduction of emissions, and that it's important for the cooperation with the suppliers. So maybe you can give insights on the most important things to know there.
Yeah, I maybe can go. So yeah, as said before, I think that is the whole part of Scope 3 emissions. So no company can actually, as of today, 100% describe their Scope 3 emission. That would evolve a totally transparent world where we already know how much CO2 every single company, every single product production would create. So where we are standing right now today is mostly to operate with average numbers. So we always compare it. That's a little bit like buying a car with the average price. You can come up with a totally wrong decision, and you don't know if you have the Porsche or the Beetle or something smaller. So also in climate, you don't want to have like an average CO2 number. You really need to know precisely what is really created in your own supply chain. So that is actually the next step right now to really work together with your suppliers, because otherwise you will just have a top-down calculation of like average numbers. If you want to come there to have reduction going on, to know where are the hotspots, then you have to work with your suppliers together and enable them to really find these data points in their own company and understand which emissions they create. And the moment you have enabled them, then you can actually tackle your own problems. So that's a whole deep question mark behind why to collaborate. If that's not only a personal or a friendly one, then it's really about the critical part of getting the right data and empower each other to work on the whole challenge.
And I think you shouldn't let perfection get in the way of progress. And that's what we see also, that there are, you know, many discussions around, you know, do you calculate like this or that? And instead of, you know, really doing stuff which has a positive impact, we talk about what, you know, you should be doing. And that's not very helpful. So I think as long as the world is hasn't standardized around certain methodologies or calculations, we need to do the best we can do. And that is action. It is taking it from here to there. That's already quite good. There is good news, I dare to say, and I don't think if it's announced, maybe anyway, as I mentioned, industry collaboration. So Together for Sustainability is the chemical initiative, and you will appreciate there's chemicals in everything. So we are, going to launch a standard that has been validated. It's about to be communicated. I think it's fair. Or maybe I'm getting into trouble. I'm not sure, but we are. And it's already aligned with all the relevant bodies. So it follows SBTI and the World Sustainability Council. So we've had all those conversations, but we need to have a standard. And we think, starting in chemicals, again, which fills into everything, makes sense. So there is help. But in the absence of clarity of those methodologies that we can all agree, just start doing good things, and then we can perfect it as we move along.
That's a perfect last sentence. Let's start doing good things, and I'm pretty sure we're going to continue this discussion, and maybe on the climate summit to come to go into decarbonization of supply chain. But yeah, really, it was great to have you, Thomas, and thanks that so many people, we still have around 150 staying here and listening to our Q&A. And would wish you from my side also a very good rest of the day. And thanks you joined for our lunch break.
Thanks, Florian, Lara, and everybody. Wish you a wonderful